Hi, my name is Katie. Nice to meet you guys. I can't believe the course is already over, but I feel like I've had just the best internship experience, and I'm excited to share some of it with you guys. I'm sure you've read my post, so now putting a face to the name. Um, I feel like the most valuable aspect of my internship has been the connections I've made with my superiors and my coworkers, and seeing their respect in me grow and their trust in me grow as well, and feeling like the projects that I've followed through on and the tasks that I completed for them really impacted their overall projects. So I've been working at Novak this summer, which is a documentary film nonprofit, and their mission is to empower communities through providing tools for storytellers. Rather than, I've seen a lot of documentaries in my life that are sort of relying on experts with a lot of privilege to tell a story about people that are maybe marginalized, or just like their stories aren't usually heard. Novak was started all the way back in the early 70s, and that was a time when TV was becoming really popular, and really influencing the American consciousness. I guess for a while it had been, but I think that was like around the time Video Killed the Radio Star came out, and like MTV was getting really big, and just TV was really having a huge impact on pop culture. So Novak started with the intention of bringing cameras to people in communities in New Orleans that wouldn't traditionally have access to all of this equipment. Now that it's actually being handheld and more individuals can have access to it, that was one of the other pivotal factors that happened in the 70s, where a shift in the technology and in the hardware that allowed people to just go out on the streets with camera, but you needed money. So Novak was started to help people in New Orleans create TV shows or create shorts and get their voices heard and put their voices out there. And today, Novak still has that same mission. And while there are people like transplants, I guess, that didn't grow up in New Orleans, or don't have the same background, that come here and use Novak's sources and resources to tell a story about people here, the way that they do it is specifically highly sensitive and considerate, and with the goal of hearing those people's voices and not imposing the transplant's view, or like the filmmaker that may be a transplant's view. Some of the other really cool things that Novak does, other than like making documentaries and putting equipment out in the community, or having equipment at really low cost, and also having trainings at low cost, affordable trainings, for different trainings to be like a PA or different things that are valued in film industry and creative industries. They also have classes in high schools here and middle schools, geared towards teaching kids about creative technologies and job opportunities within those fields. So they're doing so many different things. It's a really cool organization. And kind of a big question I had with all of these initiatives that they have to empower the community, what's my role, not being from New Orleans and not feeling like a person that has been oppressed because of the color of my skin, which looks like particularly white in the lighting of my computer. But yeah, the privilege that I've had from being white and from being like economically fortunate enough to come to Tulane and to have those privileges of taking classes with professors at Tulane, but also like I feel like it's a privilege, but it's also a disadvantage because I don't feel I've experienced like a diverse range of like connections or perspectives at Tulane. I have definitely had professors with nuanced perspectives, and I've met students that come from different backgrounds than me, but I mean, my time at Tulane, I've really only met a small handful of people my age peers that grew up in New Orleans. which is wild to me. And some of my friends that grew up in New Orleans like even feel alienated on Tulane's campus. And like, so clearly something about Tulane is not, I mean, I think we can all agree that something about Tulane is not really aimed towards serving people in New Orleans, though we have these service learning courses that are, some of them, I'm sure, impactful. I feel like I'm going off on a tangent. Okay, let's get back to Novak, which was my service learning. My question was my role in Novak. I felt like my ability to connect with my supervisors really shifted one day when I expressed not being aware and like was really vulnerable about my how sheltered I've been in my life. So my supervisor, the executive director of all of Novak, came into work one day and she was like, "You'd never believe the morning I had." And she told this long story of like different series of events of wild things that happened to her, all accumulating in watching like a 60-something-year-old man rob a Dollar General. And watching him like hobble out, running out with a laundry basket filled with random stolen goods. And I was just really in disbelief and like asking her a lot of questions about, do you think you had a mental illness? You know, what do you think was going on? And she was like, it's called poverty. It's not a mental illness. And, you know, I felt really embarrassed and called out. So I said, I feel really embarrassed that I said that. You know, I've never seen anybody steal or rob in my life. And she was like, yeah, you don't have to feel embarrassed for saying what you said. Here's the thing. And just kind of broke down for me how poverty, in her experience living in New Orleans, can have like holistic, systematic effects on a person, from nutrition to education to development, and how, yeah, you can be 60-something years old and like still robbing the Dollar General. Like, the kind of part of the story of the guy robbing the Dollar General was that it seems like he did it every week. Like, it seemed the manager ran out and he was like, "Oh, that's Billy, like, I know where he went." Anyway, so, like, a lot of the problems with poverty and oppression are deeply important to my supervisor and the people that work at Novak. And I feel like they trusted me more after being really honest about my lack of knowledge and lack of experience, which was hard for me to do. But from then on, I felt like I was able to have more important conversations with Darcy, my supervisor, where she asked me to complete more important tasks, and then in return, like, I felt like I was contributing more within the organization. I ended up producing a timeline document of everything from like when New Orleans was colonized to present day, dealing with Confederacy, slavery, and the Confederate monuments that have been put up. And different people at my organization at Novak have been working on a documentary about the monuments. So the director of that documentary, who I hadn't met yet, had read over my timeline. And when I met him, he had basically memorized the timeline I wrote, like this 15-page document or something, just listing 150 different events and different generals, which I don't even remember. He was like asking me more questions about it, and I don't fully remember. It was a lot. He was really appreciative of what I had put in, and I felt like it was essential to his role then to go on interviewing historians who have a perspective that he doesn't agree with, that he can point out the flaws in their opinions using the document that I produced. So I felt super important in that role. And then when he went out and started doing those interviews with people whose ideas he agreed with and who he didn't agree with, I was invited to go along. And I don't feel like I would have been invited if they didn't trust me, especially with sensitive different sensitive like interviewees if they thought that I wouldn't be respectful or intelligent enough or like useful, valuable in those moments. I don't think they would have invited me to come. But it was really cool. I got to sit on set for, I think, my first time ever being on set of something and listen in on some really important interviews with people who I respect a lot and was really excited to learn from. So, I think I covered the challenge of connecting with people at my internship and wondering what my place was, what my role was as being this white girl from Tulane. How I overcame that through just kind of listening and being patient and trying to be honest. And I don't think I fully overcame it. Like, I think I still have questions. And I think there were times where I was not patient enough and said some things that offended people. I hope I didn't do that too many times. There's one time that comes to mind, and I apologized and I listened, and I just tried to learn from it. So yeah, I've really loved my internship experience, and I felt that the articles we've read along the way have just supported that so much, specifically articles dealing with the white superiority complex or savior complex, how that plays into documentaries and interviewing people from different communities. That seems like extremely important and just valuable to accumulate as much information about that perspective as possible and about different perspectives on how white people interact with or how wealthy people interact with communities, and the pros and cons of that. The articles we read about about nonprofits and their role in communities, I felt like those were all really provided different perspectives and a lot of nuance to the good and bad that can be done when you think that you're being altruistic. And just like keeping things in perspective, a lot of the articles brought up a lot of questions for me and also gave me enough of a lens to start asking those questions to people at work, whereas before I think I would have felt too inadequate, unknowing, and like embarrassed to even address my own embarrassment or address my own questions about my race, background, and role in this whole picture in New Orleans and in a nonprofit in New Orleans, and specifically with like documentaries about people who are suffering. So I still definitely have a lot to learn, but thank you so much for everything, peers and professors you guys have. I mean, James, you're my professor in this course, but I know there's a few that are working on making this whole experience possible. The internship experience and the course has been really informative. Thank you so much.